Good morning. I'm not a crier at all, but Colby, you got me with that song. That was wonderful. Thank you. We've had so much of an outpouring of support and love. I mean, we can't express how appreciative we are. And we definitely need to. I want to say thank you so much to our caregivers, Veronica, Patsy, Weedy, Karina, Arlene. Thank you very much. He loved you. I will say you may have buttered him up a little too much because about a year, I'm working at the desk and Dad walks in and he's just standing there and he looks so perplexed. And I said, what? And he goes, I must really be handsome. So many women, every time I walk, they keep telling me how handsome I am. And he said, I don't get it. I go and I look in the mirror and I just don't get it, but all the women tell me I'm handsome. And he said, what do you think? And I said, you're good. And he said, I must be. Everybody says so. Let me just got a few notes here. Thomas McCutcheon texted me this week and reminded me of something that Pops had said a couple of years ago when he wasn't getting out to duck hunt much, but he'd always duck hunted so much. Carlton Fisher and Thomas McCutcheon and others came and picked up Dad, got him out of the bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and said, you're going duck hunting. And they take him out, and where they duck hunt is extremely nice, unbelievable. They've got a little kitchen in there and everything, so they get Dad up, and then they make him breakfast. They got Carlton's cooking sausage and potatoes and the whole thing and coffee. And then I noticed Dad ran out of coffee and he was going to ask for more coffee. I said, this is, that's enough. But then so many people came in and stopped by where we were hunting and visited with him. And, there wasn't a lot of duck hunting going on. In fact, I don't think there were any ducks, but we sat outside and took pictures and talked and laughed, and everything was just great. And Dad, we got ready to go, and Dad turned to Thomas and Carlton. He said, I got to thank you so much. This was really nice, but I do have to tell you, this is about the sorriest duck hunt I think I've ever been. And so now Thomas tells me every duck hunt, whether it's good or whether it's bad, when they're going out, they look at each other and go, this is about the sorriest duck hunt I've ever been on. But as you know, parking to him, I'm going to switch gears here. Parking to him was his, that's where everything was happening. And he grew up in the 30s and 40s, and he used to tell us all the time about going down the streets. His dad ran a grocery. His mom and dad ran a grocery. I think she did more of the work. But he said there were several grocery stores in town, and there were diners. Of course, there were liquor stores. There were just a lot of things going on. And the mic is working. I'm talking about parking. Which it's not the same, but anyway, he just the community there, and I saw that community firsthand when the community coming together, and let's see, it would have been in the late '60s. The town, a group of men got some ideas to make a little league and to have them. So they got everybody together, and I remember all the men going up there and working out in the middle of this field. I mean, tons of people. And they built nice wooden dugouts, nice wooden fence. They got people to pay $100 and had big signs, hand-painted signs, the whole thing. And it was incredible. It went from nothing to a very nice Little League program overnight. And I remember Mr. Jack McNeil was the commissioner, and Dad sat in the booth and was a color man, and he wasn't going to be super quiet. I mean, he'd say things like, and now the batter is Dennis Wood, the Togo Kid. And so I just remember one night, I think this team was from Marvel that came down to play us, and Dad got on the microphone. He said, I have to tell you, he said, our umpires are perfect. He said, our umpires are volunteers. They do not get paid. They do not. So when they make a call, we do not criticize our umpires. Now, please yell for your teams, but do not criticize our umpires. So the game starts, and some of the fans forgot the rules. Typical Marvel. I mean, that's just. And anyway, they forgot the rules, and they quieted down for a minute, and then a few minutes later, Dad gets back on the mic, and he says, "Okay, this is to the woman sitting in." And then, pardon, you got to preface this. We had, for 4 teams, we had red bleachers, green bleachers, blue you know what I mean, and black bleachers. But Dad goes, "This is to the woman in the green shirt sitting on the top row of the red bleachers. I do not want to embarrass you, but if you do yell again, I'm sorry, but we will have to ask you to leave." And I remember I was playing second base, and I looked out, towards the darkness over there, and there was a woman, and she seemed to be wearing a green shirt, and she had the slowest walk. It was kind of a defeated walk, really, and she was trudging into the night towards where the cars were parked, and that was over 50 years ago, and no one has seen her since. She was headed south, if that helps. The pandemic was hard on Pops. He is a very social guy, and it was just hard on him. And he always wanted to get out. And he came in one day and he said, "Well, I think I'm gonna go to Walmart and get some crickets." And I said, "There is a pandemic, Dad. We've been talking about it some." And he said, "Yeah, but I need to fish. I'm gonna go get some crickets." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Dad, I got one word for you: coronavirus." He said, "I'll tell you what I think. I don't think those crickets have coronavirus." But I can't talk about Pops without talking a little bit about duck hunting, and he's had the same bass boat. He's probably older than me. I don't know. He's had that bass boat a long time. And I remember one year the water was way high, and so instead of going in our regular launching place, we went by some bridge. We're going in, and it was me and Dad and Mr. H.P. Sisk, and we're going in, and there's this big, and this is unfamiliar territory where we were, even for them, because they knew everywhere around there. So we come up, and there's this big thing of brush, and Dad goes, "H.P., should we go right or left?" And Mr. H.P. said, "John A., doesn't matter at all." And Dad said, "Well, that's fine. I'm going to go right." And H.P. said, "Heck no, go left." And I didn't know it at the time, I think there was some hidden hostility there. Mr. H.P. might not even have realized that he had it himself, because in that same bass boat and on that same Langgill River, Dad had been trying to kill Mr. H.P. for years. Because a few years before that, I remember, I don't know how the situation happened, but we had several boats leaving at the same time from hunting to go back, to the launching pad. And Dad and HP were in his bass boat, and I was riding in another boat, and I just kind of glanced over, and I didn't have time to scream, because right in front of them was a huge tree, which was entirely visible. And it looked like they were going to slam into it, which they did. And they were in their 70s at that time. What's that? It's a hard story to tell. It's emotional. They were in their 70s. Let's do that again. Sorry. They were in their 70s at that time, and they hit that tree. And those two old men looked like bowling pins flying around that boat. And it could have been really bad. It wasn't. But Mr. H.P. had been sitting on a bench in the middle of the boat, and he went forward and went hit the captain's chair. And he had a light concussion. We brought him here, and everything's fine. But let's wait just a minute though. You may be asking, so Mr. HP is sitting on the bench in the middle of the boat when there's a perfectly good captain's chair at the front of the boat. Why was he sitting in the middle of the boat? Well, I'm glad you asked, because years before that, many years before that, back when HP had a more full head of hair and Dad was still bald, there was a trip. There was one time they were going out. This was pre-duck season. Oh, by the way, I look see Roger Fisher over there. Roger named the road going into the Duck Club John A. Brenner Lane, and we appreciate that. Yeah. But so anyway, they're up this pre-duck season, but they still got their full regalia. They got the waders, they got the hats, they got the duck callers. Even though it's preseason, they might be putting the decoys out, and they'll call a few ducks in, point their finger at them and go boom or something. But anyway, they were getting ready. They had decoys and brush, and Uncle Fred Brenner was going to come. Dad's older brother was going to come along in a few minutes, and he's going to bring his own boat. And I'm going to try to tell this story. Everything I'm telling you about this story was told to me by Dad. So if you can somehow hear him through me, that would, because everything I'm telling you is his story, all the details, everything. But I tell you what, I'll add the weather. Let's make it a gray day, throw in some clouds. So now we should be good to go. So they take off in their boat, and the Langell River is about 3 to 4 feet deep. And no matter what level, the water level can vary greatly. And no matter what water level there are stumps that you can't see. The water is, it's horrible. I mean, you can't see anything. And so as Dad tells it, they were driving along at a pretty good clip, and all of a sudden the boat stopped, but Mr. HP kept going. At the time he was in the captain's chair, which at that time was probably a much newer captain's chair. But anyway, Dad said Mr. HP was kind of launched into the sky, where he came down in a perfect head-first dive into the Langell. And when I say head first, I don't mean, swan dive or Olympic dive. I'm talking about the head first where you lead with your hunting hat. And Dad said, whereupon he hit the water, his head went straight down into the bottom of the muddy Langell River, and he got stuck. And his legs, Dad said he was just stuck, and his legs were sticking out of the water doing this. And Dad said he was just down there for a minute, and then he got up, and Mr. HP stood up, and there was mud coming off his hat and mud coming off his glasses, and he just said, ah. So in those days, we did not have Gore-Tex, which sheds water. We had, they had whatever it was that absorbs water, and if you don't have something that sheds water, the quickest way to get warm is to shed all your clothes. So they went to the blind, and Mr. HP took everything off to get warm, except for his hunting hat and his glasses. And about that time, Uncle Fred showed up. and there was Mr. HP exactly like the day he was born, except he was taller and had a hunting cap on. And Uncle Fred, looked at HP, and I'm sure Dad was standing there like this, and he looks at Dad, and he looks at HP, and he looks back at Dad, and he goes, I'm not even going to ask. But we will definitely miss him, and we miss Mom, and we miss Mr. HP. We miss Uncle Fred. We miss Miss Elizabeth Teed. We miss countless others. We miss an entire generation. And yet, the life that God gives us is always a blessing. Thank you.